Welcome to Frame Rate, our Patreon-only film discussion podcast. And here we are today talking about a film that Patrick and I have both recently seen. It is actually available on demand now. You can rent it for $20.
What is up with that? I am sorry, but that is, and they're all of the Warner Brothers films that have been put out in the sort
They're
of
trying to recoup their money.
cinema
That's how much you pay. That's how much you'd pay for tickets, essentially, ish.
That's a lot more than I pay for one movie ticket out here.
Yeah,
$20. That's
ridiculous.
A lot of money, and that's no concessions.
That's the price of the movie. You could download it and buy it for that much digitally.
Yeah, right, exactly. But also, also, it's not even a theater, so you're not even getting the experience of going to the theater or getting concessions or anything. You're just like getting a fucking streaming movie at home that has already been out for a month and a half or whatever. You know what I mean? It's least, nobody's gonna do that shit. They gotta lower that price.
So, what movie are we talking about, everyone? We are talking about The Invisible Man, starring Elisabeth Moss and directed by Leigh Whannell, who is responsible for the Conjuring films and sort of the Jason Blum produced horror empire that's out there.
As well as co-writing Saw.
Yes,
a couple of sequels.
Indeed. Yeah, and the first Saw was pretty great, actually. So we decided we wanted to get together. Dan could not join us; he has not seen the film. But me and Patrick felt strongly that we wanted to talk about it.
We could. The plan had been for Dan to go see it, but because of the situation we're all in right now with this pandemic, which I'm sure, depending on where in the month this comes out, who knows how it'll sound. But for context, we're recording this sort of in the transition to late March from mid-March, and it's a very intense time pandemic-wise in the United States. So theaters are closed for the most part in most of the urban areas of the country where the three of us live. And this streaming at home option is the only way to see it. But Dan was like, I'm not going to pay $20 to see this movie.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
And I don't blame him
I thought that was like a purchase choice. It's ridiculous.
It's a one-time rental viewing. Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, let's make this movie for free for viewing on demand, but let's charge a fucking arm and a leg. Come on.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But it also goes to show you the machinations of studio pricing and all of the hidden things we don't know about how much it actually costs. I mean, we're getting an interesting window into what distributors actually charge movies to show things, and why concession prices are so high, membership prices are so high. It's because they're not cheap. It costs a lot of money to get the rights to show something, and we're kind of getting a little taste of that. But I do have to say, if you are at home listening to this and you are wondering, should I or should I not? I think you should. I think this movie is absolutely terrific. And I think if it's down to this or The Hunt or Emma or whatever the other, $20 streaming options are right now, go with The Invisible Man, because I think it's just an extraordinary film. And it is such a testament to what Leigh Whannell... So it's not Whannell, it's Whannell?
I don't know. It might be Whannell.
In my head, I always say Whannell, but I don't know. Somebody listening to this is gonna give us.
He's Australian, so who knows? Who knows what that last name is?
We'll say it's Kangaroo. Leigh Kangaroo. Yeah. It's such a testament to what an underrated filmmaker he is. Although I feel like that's definitely shifting. I feel like people are getting sort of like he reminds me a little bit of Craig Mazin in that regard. Craig Mazin was somebody who was around Hollywood forever. Did a lot of really, kind of like solid workmanship stuff. He worked on like the Scary Movie, franchise, and like was a valued rewriter, somebody who would be brought in to kind of clean something up, who just kind of understood how to make a movie, but nobody really gave two shits about him. And then he does Chernobyl. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that was out there, I feel like Leigh Whannell reminds me a little bit of that, and that he's kind of been here on the periphery. He's been working with James Wan. He's been working with other filmmakers.
He's been an actor. He was an actor in the first Conjuring, or was it the
Saw.
Conjuring? Oh, in the first Saw, yes.
Yeah. And then he was the other guy in the room in the first Saw movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden he comes along and like gets the ability to make movies on his own terms, and he does Upgrade, which was awesome, and he does The Invisible Man, which totally blew me absolutely out of the water. I could not get over how good this movie was.
Yep, I think it won the box office a couple weeks in a row.
It did, and it was not projected to at all. It was projected to make like $24 million in its opening weekend, and it made almost $10 million opening night. And they were like, "Oh man, we got to rewrite what we think this movie's going to make." And before they pulled it from theaters, I actually looked this up because I was curious about it. Yeah, it's currently at $123 million box office.
Is that domestic?
It's a very good question. I don't know.
I bet it's domestic.
You think it made more than that?
Oh yeah. Internationally, absolutely. Interestingly enough, before we get into the conversation about the film itself, this film is Universal re-engineering.
It's worldwide. It's 123 worldwide.
Okay. So The Invisible Man is Universal re-engineering their Dark Universe stories. What Universal was going to do, or they had started to do, was to bring back their Dark Universe, which is the Mummy, the Invisible Man, Frankenstein, Dracula, all of the Wolfman, and there were a few iterations. All of those movies flopped. They all flopped. And Universal decided. Or was
it just the Mummy?
There was the Mummy. There was Dracula with
they
Evans.
retroactively.
Not Luke Evans.
Yeah, Luke Evans. So that was not originally part of it, and then they retconned it to be part of the Dark Universe. But that was a retcon. It was really only the Mummy was the big pilot for this thing. Which on paper, I mean, what better franchise opportunity is there? The Universal monsters are some of the most beloved cultural icons in the world. Like they defined a lot of the earlier part of the 20th century cinematic landscape. They're part of global popular culture. The stories are fucking brilliant, and that's why they are so evergreen. And then you have this like complete ass shit of a movie coming out a few years ago starring Tom Cruise, and it just single-handedly destroyed the concept, which is crazy. Although The Invisible Man, I think, goes towards bringing it back. Oh
yeah, and with the problem with the Tom Cruise film, and even Universal themselves have made some public concession saying, yeah, we got this wrong, is that instead of having storytellers tell a story, they try to essentially do what we've talked about in the Alien franchise, is have a studio throw together a movie and then put a star. With Tom Cruise, you don't get a movie, you get a star that they build a movie around. And that's problematic. It's problematic even though his Mission Impossible films are really successful. They're not about the team. Like Mission Impossible, the series was known as a team of people working towards one thing. The movies are one guy and his helpers. That's not what Mission Impossible was ever about, but that's what it's become about. So the Mummy film was just dog shit. It was just laughable. It was so cringe and so terrible. Like I saw it because I'm like, no, I'm interested in this. Like I like Universal's IP. I like the idea of a scary mummy film. The trailer was interesting, and then I watched it and I was like, how is this thing this terrible? How is it this bad? So I digress or progress. Universal took a step back. They asked who was interested. Jason Blum said he was interested, and they put a film together, shot relatively cheaply, and it made a bunch of money. I think it made its budget back. I think it was made for like 35 or 40 million or less than that or something like that.
Yeah, hang on. I still have that page handy. Let me see what it was actually made for. Budget was $7 million, Jamie Prater.
No.
A $7 million production budget.
Wow! So
and it's currently almost at
quadrupled and
million.
more.
Oh yeah, they've destroyed that.
That's
Talk
great.
about
that's
and that
great.
is in the midst of an emerging global pandemic. That is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So we saw, this was a movie that I was waiting to see. Like, so we had discussed this earlier. I thought the trailer was absolute garbage for this movie. I saw it every time I saw 1917 in theaters, which was quite a few times because I love that movie. Every time I saw it, this was one of the trailers that would play, and every time I would kind of poke fun at it because I felt like the trailer just showed the whole entire story every single time, and I was like, why would anybody go see this? The whole thing is totally revealed, including a lot of the scare sequences. I do have to say, although the story was quite different from what the trailer led me to believe, there were enough of the scares kind of spoiled that I felt like I'd already kind of seen them when the movie was happening.
Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about a few things, so we recommend. I know this is kind of hard because the movie isn't in theater. It is readily available for anyone to see. Again, you're paying $20. So
any millionaire who's interested in seeing it.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody who's not been fired or furloughed or let go from their jobs. Who doesn't, who has to use $20 to buy food and toilet paper. But yeah, the movie is totally worth seeing. Maybe if a bunch of people want to get together.
That's a good idea.
People who are already quarantined. No, I know, but like people who are already in their house together already.
Right. If
you guys want to throw in maybe $5 and watch it, it's totally worth it. But what I loved about, so the Invisible Man stars Elisabeth Moss, and it opens up with her escaping a house, and she lives with this man who looks like he's, a rich billionaire, and he's into a lot of scientific things, a lot of what's the word for that? What is he into? A lot of high tech stuff though. Optics. Okay.
Right.
And she escapes him, and it's really traumatic, and she's, it's a very interesting sequence in the beginning. And essentially the movie plays off of this idea that she's being gaslit by this man who wants her in his life. Who wants her in his life so bad that he would kill her to have her back. That's what, and so that's what the story around. It's really this woman trying to escape, and it's not a damsel in distress. At first, she's being gaslit for a long time, and she's like, "What's going on?" And of course, nobody believes her, which is really interesting because when people start talking about abuse or things that are happening in their lives, what are they met with a lot of times from the public or the speculation and okay, whatever you say. So it's very, very, the script is really smart. It's really smart. It's really fresh. The starring role played by Elisabeth Moss, she's just phenomenal.
Incredible.
What's interesting is that the lead, or not the lead, but the Invisible Man is played by nobody. I've never seen that guy before. I don't know who he is.
Haunting of Hill House.
Who was he in The Haunting of Hill House?
He's the brother with the drug problem.
Really?
Yeah, bitch.
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen that show. That's a good show.
Hey, that is a great show. We should probably add that. But no, he was what's his fucking name? Peter in The Haunting of Hill House.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I thought he was absolutely incredible in that, as in this too. But you know what I want to say is the reason why it doesn't feel like a damsel in distress movie is because A, I mean it's not, but also
it's not.
But it's not. But B, the real reason is because it's her story. Like the Invisible Man, Adrian Griffin, is like not the point of this movie at all in any real way. It is her experience. We see it through her eyes. We experience it alongside her. We never have any doubt. Something that I love about this is that I feel like in a lot of these movies that where a character is being gaslit, we're kind of the filmmaker likes to give us this little kind of twist where it's like, wait a minute, like is this an unreliable narrator? Like are we crazy too? Like did we miss something? There's never any doubt about whether or not she knows what she's doing.
Although I felt like there was a point that I felt like, is he really following her at this point? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure at one early point, and then of course he is following her. But what I love about this movie so much, because I love psychological horror, this man is present and you do not know where he is. Yeah. She can feel it, she knows it, but you don't. And that one scene where she's looking down the ladder and he's right there and she throws the bucket.
Oh, that part, was I fucking terrifying. Jumped out of my seat on that moment.
Terrifying.
Although it's also in the trailer, so that fucking doesn't help anybody. Not. Yes, it is in the trailer.
I don't remember seeing that in the trailer.
It is in the trailer.
I saw that trailer several times. I'll have to look again. But the movie is just really, really well crafted. And again, it's really smart. And one interesting factoid about the film is that when the director wrote it and he hired Elisabeth Moss to be the star, my dog is scratching at the door. Hold on one second. Mona, go lay down. Go lay down. Just go lay down.
Gosh,
Stop it.
So cute. Is that her little claws?
So when he wrote the film, of course, the star is a woman, and he asked Elisabeth Moss, "Can you read the script and let me know? Because I wrote this character as a woman. I need to know if I'm being true. Is this true? Would you do this as a woman? Would you feel this way?" And so he took Elisabeth Moss through the script, and she altered some stuff with him to make it more authentic. And I think that was really brilliant. And you know me, I have a hard time with men writing female characters. Oftentimes they're one note, or they're damsel in distress, or they think a strong woman has a gun, which is part of some of my but I have issue with some of fandom because people think Ripley's badass because she holds a gun. That's not why Ripley is badass. And in Invisible Man, Elisabeth Moss is badass because of who she is, not because of what she does or actions that she takes, but because she has strength of her own knowledge. She has agency, and her agency is powerful, but it takes her a while to get there. It takes her a while to overcome her fear. She's lost in her fear for a long time.
And in a long time within the context of the movie, which is important. I want to talk about pacing for a second. So I will, to go back to what we were talking about before about whether or not like we kind of believe her as the audience or whether or not we feel like we're being gaslit ourselves. I think that I did go back and forth a little bit on that until she found the diazepam bottle in her apartment or in Aldis's apartment. Then I was like, or was that is Aldis the name of the actor or the name of the character?
I don't remember.
Anyway, but the cop and when he's staying with in his house, And she finds it as a bottle and it's got the blood on it, and then it's like then she knows that this is like clearly happening. After that, from that to the end of the movie, like there's no doubt we're just in her shoes with her experience. We believe her, we trust her. We're not fucking mansplaining shit to her. It feels very genuine in that regard. So that's important, and that's very early. That's like 20 minutes into the movie. But then all the way through, she does not get that resolve until like very close to the end of the movie. For most of the film, she's dealing with this like absolute fear and this complete feeling of like, I can't even get my head around what's going on. I don't know how to deal with it. Although she understands what's going on and she's insisting on it, she herself is still trying to figure out like how this could possibly be dealt with. She's not sleeping well. She's afraid. She's not like suddenly superhuman. But then when she gets it, when she figures out how she can, get back at him, when she figures out how she can entrap him, that's not until the end of the movie, basically. And that to me feels way more genuine than having this character who was like just a skilled architect and a smart woman, like have her like not all of a sudden become this fucking secret agent, with gunplay and doing backflips and shit. Like she's really like unequipped to deal with this. And then she finds that resolve. And just like Ripley finds her resolve in Alien, it's not like when Alien begins, Ripley is this, incredibly, perfect, machine of war or something. Like
she's never that. She never. No,
she never is, right? But she does. She eventually is able to handle herself. But in the beginning of Alien, like that's not something she can't like do. She has to get there. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the time, and I think you're right. I think part of this is a problem when men write female characters, but I think even writing male characters too. I think a lot of the time you have this believability gap that forms, where a character is presented with extraordinary circumstances, and just because they're the protagonist, it's like somehow okay for them to be able to do everything flawlessly, And I love that she doesn't. I love that like some of her like techniques don't work. I love that she gets snuck up on, and I love that allows us to be really afraid. And I'd want to, before we close out, mention I feel like some of the set pieces in this are just like unforgettably tense. One of them, I think, is that attic staircase moment, which I just think is just extraordinary, and it's
iconic.
One of the only jump scares in the whole movie, and that is another thing too, right? I feel like this is in the tradition of the best horror films, although this is maybe more of a thriller than a horror, but it's kind of on that line. I feel like the best films in that genre are the films where you're psychologically afraid and you're very deeply emotionally invested in this and on the edge of your seat the whole time, so that when something does startle you, it feels like it wasn't cheap. It feels like earned. And when she throws the paint on him on the staircase, I was like, I jumped in my seat and I was like, fuck yeah, that was so good. That was like, and in no small part due to Ben Wallfish's extraordinary music once again.
Oh, the score is
which was fucking ravishing. And just so beautifully written, like all of his music is, and we will be hopefully talking to him very soon for Shoulder.
You know what I love too, in terms of psychological scares, where she's in her cell after she's been she's deemed a murderer and crazy. They take her to cell, and she's like, "There's somebody in this room with me," and he's sitting right there. Like that was scary just to even repeat those lines to me. And again, something sort of more subtext. This woman is telling these people, I'm experiencing something I can't explain to you, but I'm experiencing it. And everyone, her friends, her truest friends and family are like, yeah, I think you're kind of crazy. And it really, and I don't want to get too, because we're about to wrap this, but I don't want to get too deep into it. But the people who come forward with stories of abuse are met with that all the time. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Are you sure? Are you sure that happened? Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. And they look at you like you're a little bit crazy, and you're you're saying something that happened to you by someone that they know that they haven't ever seen that side of them before, and you're asking them to believe you. You're asking them to do the impossible and to believe you. And a lot of people are met with speculation and doubt, and it's a rough thing to go through as someone who went through that myself. So I really thought it was a really powerful way to tell this story in a meta way and in a literal way as well. This man was not just invisible physically. What he was doing to her was invisible to everyone else too. Right. They only had her word to go on. This successful billionaire who's done all of this great work in the world, this woman is saying, no, he's a monster. Physically, literally, psychologically, and she's asking everyone to believe that, and everyone's saying, I don't know.
Nobody wants to. Yeah.
Because when you hear the truth, you have two choices. You can either do what it asks of you because the truth commands a response, or you can deny it.
And because we buy in so much to what we think, and because we have so much ownership in what we assume the world to be like, I mean, that's why Bill Cosby got away with it for so long. That's right.
Sure.
It's a great example of that, right? Or even fucking Harvey Weinstein, like all of these men who get away with this atrocious, monstrous act for so long, for decades and decades and decades, they get by because so many people said, oh, that doesn't make sense. That can't be true. And when they do that, though, it's almost never in this aggressive, a lot of the time in film and television, when they try to show, for example, a victim of sexual abuse speaking out about something, they show people kind of like being like, no, like sit down, you know what you're talking about. But usually that's not the case. Usually it's a lot of people trying to comfort you by telling you basically that you don't know what you're talking about, but being like, listen, like, I love you and I'm here for you, but like, We'll talk about this another time. And in most of the movie, see the lead character, that's how people deal with her, right? At first, that's how her sister deals with her. That's how, her sister's ex-husband deals with her. That people are very caring about her. They're kind of trying to like help her along, but they are not taking her seriously. They are not, at all. Yeah. It's not even a question, but they care about her. She's not this pariah to them.
Yeah, and they know something's wrong, and they might think something's wrong up here in her head.
Right.
But they definitely like, oh no, we were here for you, but they're just sort of doubting the mechanism that's causing that.
Right.
I think what's funny is I've told you a story, and Dan, of something that's very unbelievable that I'm not going to share here that happened to me. And it's interesting what people can allow themselves to believe or not. It really is. I mean, and there are all sorts of stories like that in the world where unbelievable things happen to people or crazy things, maybe not to the extent of what I experienced.
You're not going to tell people what you're talking about?
I'm not telling people, at least not right now.
Okay.
Nope.
It's nothing bad, people. We're not believing Jamie because something bad happened. This is something.
No, I don't know if they don't not believe me. I think they believe that I believe it.
That's how I say it. Yeah, but this neither here nor there. I do want to go back really quick. I feel like I love what you said. I think you said it so beautifully. There's nothing to add to that about the subtext, but other than to say that to me that was part of why this movie is so beautifully done, is because that subtext is so clear the whole time, and yet it never becomes the focus of the movie. It never becomes some sort of like it never becomes a movie that's just like about victims of abuse or about men controlling women, although those things are suffusing it everywhere, and you can't go there and not take that away from it. But it's about this woman. It's the story of this woman's experience, right?
Yeah.
But there is no question about the greater goal of the movie, which is to illuminate this whole secondary thing about how we treat women in this society, and about how we treat whistleblowers, and how we treat people who have been wronged, who are trying to be honest about it. And I love the idea that Adrian Griffin, who, just super briefly, in the original, the H.G. Wells novel and in the original Universal pictures, like he's not a bad person. He becomes a bad person by a result of this, but he's like, altruistic and a great scientist, and then because he can't reverse the invisibility process, basically goes nuts, and becomes evil, right? Because he can get away with doing evil things because nobody can see him, and he stops trying to like lie by wrapping himself up, like he basically just becomes okay with this idea that he's no longer human, kind of in a Dr. Manhattan kind of a way. I feel like in this movie, what I love is that like he is evil in the exact way that most serial killers are evil, which is that like most spousal abuse, most serial murder, most of these things come about not because people have a bloodlust or because people just get off on violence. It comes about because some people need to control things so violently that they will do whatever it takes to enact that control in the world. And if that control is taken from them in one part of their life, they will go wild to try to get it in some other part of their life. A lot of serial killers start because they're abused as kids, or because they're, shunned by their peers or something. They feel like they don't have any control over themselves. They don't have any ability to like make their mark on the world. And they say, oh, but I can, by controlling somebody so much that I can actually kill them, I can get a little bit of control, and that could be me getting my way. And then, and then it spirals out of control from there. And what I love is that this character was so believable because he wasn't some sneering lunatic. He was kind of sympathetic in a fucked up way. You can kind of understand why. You can't understand why he did what he did, obviously, but you can understand that he was a human. You can see him as somebody who probably wasn't always to that level, who probably, if things had happened differently to him earlier in his life, maybe he would have not been, this fucking monstrous person that he became.
Mm-hmm. What I think is interesting though is the scene where, and again, this is a spoiler show. The scene where
I feel like people hopefully get that.
Yeah. When they find him in the basement in that
right. He's like,
where right away, Elisabeth Moss's character, she knows it's, oh no. He is, and they're like, oh no! Right away, people come to his defense. Oh no, he's a victim too. That wasn't him. Right away, they believe him. Yeah. Right away, they believe his story. Where all along, even though these crazy things were happening for her, no one was believing her story. Right. But he shows up, a man bound only in his boxers, in a little corner in the basement. Oh, it's me. They believed his story right away, and I thought that was very, very interesting. And it's very similar in our society, where typically if a man comes forward about sexual abuse, he's believed far faster than women are, because a man's saying it, and a man would never talk about this type of thing.
Right. What does he have to gain from it? It must be embarrassing for him to say that, right? Yeah. Like, it's so fucking one-sided. It's absolutely absurd. Yeah. And I love, as we close, the reason why people listening to this, the reason why we keep saying as we close, is because we're really trying to keep ourselves to like make these a half hour long, but we keep going like an hour and a half. So we're really trying to be on this. So as we close, what I love so much is in the final sequence at the dinner at his house, I feel like that is just played by both actors so exquisitely well, because watching it, you feel, because of the social cues and because of how we're acculturated, you feel sorry for him. You feel like, even though you know that you have no reason to, and even though you feel like this is ridiculous, because you're getting these like emotional cues from his character, you're feeling this like, oh, should I, maybe he really did change. And the whole time Elisabeth Moss is like, fucking no, there's absolutely no way. And you're realizing, like, I'm becoming a party to this again. I need to back the fuck up and let her do her thing. And then when she does her thing, it is scary. Like, she is so good at it. It's fucking chilling.
What's interesting is she's gone back into the lion's den to Mona. That's enough. She's gone back into the lion's den to the place where it happened to reverse the roles. So everyone check it out. Invisible Man, film, starring Elisabeth Moss, directed by Leigh Whannell or whatever.
Leigh Whannell.
It's really, really great. It is on video on demand right now for $20 per rental. Hopefully it becomes available for sale soon, because I'll buy it for sure.
Oh, I will buy that definitely movie in a heartbeat. And also pick up the soundtrack. It's available on streaming platforms. And Benjamin Wallfish, I really feel like he's obviously not like underrated among us, But I feel like in the general public, people still don't. He's not like a name people recognize, which is just criminal. And I really feel like, obviously, if you're listening to this show, you probably are familiar with his work for 2049. That sells itself. We don't have to even get into that. But I really feel like the music to both Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 is just extraordinarily good. And for me, that was when I was like, oh my god, this guy is not just sort of this like one hit. Like, he's really a genuinely gifted composer. And this music in this film is on the level of that. Motivically, there's a lot going on. He's like has all these really great little descending figures that start outlining a scale as they come together, and in the same way that, like, as the light hits objects, you can see it outlining what it actually looks like in space. It's just very physical music, very geometric music. It's very beautifully written, and it's very melodic in a very kind of sort of
it is. I love it. There's a big Saw Easter egg in this film. I don't know if you saw it, but I did. Huge Easter egg that is. If it's in a flash, but you see.
Are you talking about when they find his body?
No.
Okay.
You see an image of the clown guy. What's his name? Yes, you see it. It's like drawn on a gate, and that gate is somewhere. Yeah, it's very interesting. Anyways, check it out.
To be continued. We'll probably talk about this more someday, because this is fucking great.
Maybe once Dan sees it, we'll talk about it again a little bit longer. So.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Stay safe. Bye.